Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. The Defenders miniseries. Marvel's The Defenders, or simply The Defenders, is an American web television miniseries created by Douglas Petrie and Marco Ramirez for Netflix based on the Marvel Comics characters Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, who form the eponymous superhero team. It is set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, sharing continuity with the films of the franchise, and is the culmination of a series of interconnected shows from Marvel and Netflix. The miniseries is produced by Marvel Television in association with ABC Studios 9.5 Fingers Inc. and Goddard Textiles, with Ramirez serving as showrunner. The limited series stars Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, Daredevil, Krysten Ritter as Jessica Jones, Mike Colter as Luke Cage and Finn Jones as Danny Rand, Iron Fist, all reprising their roles from their individual series. The miniseries also stars Eka Darville, Elden Henson, Jessica Henwick, Simone Missick, Ramón Rodríguez, Rachael Taylor, Deborah Ann Woll, Élodie Yung, Rosario Dawson, Scott Glenn and Sigourney Weaver. Development on the miniseries began in late 2013, with Cox, the first actor, cast in May 2014. Petrie and Ramirez joined as showrunners in April, after serving in the same role on the second season of Daredevil, though Petrie left with the start of filming, which took place in New York City from October 2016 to March 2017. The Defenders premiered in New York on July 31, 2017, with the full season of 8 episodes released on August 18, 2017 on Netflix. Guest Stan Lee makes a cameo appearance through an on-set photograph as NYPD Captain Irving Forbush, the same photograph seen in previous Marvel Netflix series. The Aeolus Quartet also cameo as themselves. Development. In October 2013, Deadline reported that Marvel was preparing for drama series and a miniseries totaling 60 episodes to present to video-on-demand services and cable providers, with Netflix, Amazon and WGN America expressing interest. A few weeks later, Marvel and Disney announced that Marvel Television and ABC Studios would provide Netflix with live-action series centered around Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, leading up to a miniseries based on The Defenders. In November 2015, Marvel Comics editor-in-chief Joe Quesada stated there was no apprehension from Marvel in changing the lineup of The Defenders from the classic original lineup to Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage and Iron Fist, because to the world at large, no one knows who the Defenders are. So the idea of taking the concept and name and applying it to the Marvel Cinematic Universe feels wholly natural, adding that Marvel has a wonderful concept behind why the group would form in the MCU, and why they would be called the Defenders. In April 2016, Marvel announced that Douglas Petrie and Marco Ramirez, the showrunners for the second season of Marvel's Daredevil, would serve as showrunners and executive producers on Marvel's The Defenders. Daredevil creator Drew Goddard also serves as an executive producer on the miniseries, along with Kareem Zarek, Cindy Holland, Ali Goss, Allison Engel, Chris Henigman, Alan Fine, Stan Lee, Joe Quesada, Jim Corey and head of Marvel Television Jeff Loeb. S.J. Clarkson, director of the first 2 episodes, also serves as an executive producer on the first episode. In January 2015, Netflix coup Ted Sarandos had stated that the series was eligible to go into multiple seasons for sure, and Netflix would look at how well they are addressing both the Marvel fanbase but also the broader fanbase in terms of determining if additional seasons would be appropriate. However, in July 2016, Loeb referred to the miniseries as a one-off event rather than a season of an ongoing story. Loeb also confirmed that the miniseries would consist of 8 episodes and stated that Petrie and Ramirez would consult with Melissa Rosenberg, Shea Hodari Coker, and Scott Buck, the showrunners of Marvel's Jessica Jones, Marvel's Luke Cage and Marvel's Iron Fist, respectively, on how their characters would react to certain situations. The other showrunners read each of the scripts for the Defenders, and provided insight into each individual character's world. On this collaboration, Petrie said of Rosenberg specifically that she was wonderful, because she's in this position of being a fellow artist and letting us know what we do, but at the same time loving her character and being protective of her character and wanting us to get it right and wanting to guide us and help up but also let us be free. Rosenberg added that all of the showrunners for the other series felt really included in the process. Loeb compared this relationship to Joss Whedon's approach, with a similar crossover in the MCU films Marvel's The Avengers, for which Whedon sought out all of the creative input from everybody that had worked on Iron Man and Hulk and Captain America and Thor, but he had to make The Avengers its own thing. At the start of filming in October 2016, Petrie left the series as co-showrunner. Loeb explained, "We got to a point where the scripts were done and we wanted Marco to continue, and Doug pursued other avenues." Finn Jones said The Defenders feels like the end of Phase 1 of the Marvel Netflix series, with the events of the miniseries leading into the beginning of another phase. Writing. By late May 2016, Petrie and Ramirez had turned in a completed story for the miniseries, based on a very bare-bones structure from Loeb. The latter described the completed story as epic, feeling that all the characters have great roles, where everyone feels like they're telling more of their own ongoing tale. Petrie and Ramirez created a story that would allow viewers to watch The Defenders without having seen any of the previous series while still not redundant, stating information from the previous series for those who had seen them. Ramirez noted it was a trapeze act of figuring out the writing, making sure to never be expository, but also make sure it wasn't a requirement that you would have go back to watch the other series to fully understand what was happening. The intention was for the miniseries to feel like Daredevil Season 2.5, a Luke Cage Season 1.5, a Jessica Jones 1.5, and Iron Fist 1.5, telling the story that came their immediate seasons and their next ones. Loeb compared this dynamic to the Olympics, where you get to know all of these athletes in their various sports all throughout their careers, and then once every 4 years they're going to get together and compete against each other. Coker further compared the miniseries to the forming of the Wu-Tang Clan in Voltron. Petrie noted that the intent was not to stop any of the character arcs built in the previous series, rather each character is just taking this incredible epic detour, then going back into their own respective pools. Ramirez said the ending was designed so they could go back to their individual worlds, but it's not like they're apart permanently in any way. Goddard talked about the resulting genre for the miniseries, since each of the individual series were different from one another, feeling that bringing them all together created its own genre. Ramirez added that the series' tone was one of the most challenging and most exciting parts of this project, and has really just been about organically blending the tones of the previous series together so that it feels like they're all cohesive and all of a piece. Scenes in the early episodes were created to feel like the most optimal versions of each individual series, which slowly start to cross-pollinate, helping the identity of the Defenders to emerge, which is kind of a combination of all the visual and sonic elements of each of their individual worlds. Ramirez and Petrie also wanted to ensure the project did not feel like a corporate mandate striving to make it feel earned. and real and grounded, and also topical and important as the individual series had done. Cautioning against the easy comparison to the Avengers, Loeb said the aim with the Defenders was to say, okay, how do we do that? And how do we do it different? We saw how the Avengers came together, and it doesn't quite go as smoothly as you'd like it to go. He added the Defenders didn't have a D on their belt buckles and a Defenders Tower. We agreed from the very beginning that these folks could at the very end go, I never want to see your face again. Loeb also noted that the sky's not going to open up, and aliens aren't going to come flying out of it. That's the Avengers' job. That's what they're supposed to do. The street-level heroes always come from a very real place. The Dirty Dozen, Seven Samurai and other films where characters came together who did not want to come together served as influences for the Defenders more so than the Avengers. Regarding the antagonist, Ramirez said having the Defenders face an alien threat like the Avengers, for example, was never an option as the crossover was always going to be a street-level New York story. This did prove challenging in choosing an antagonist though, as the four Defenders are shown to be really powerful people in their individual series, and the miniseries villain had to prove a challenge for the four of them together. Discussing why the antagonists were the Hand, and not a previously established antagonist, such as Wilson Fisk, Ramirez felt the villain needed to be new to all four of them so that everyone was on the same page. We needed a villain who was a common denominator, as opposed to everyone having a villain from their show, who they're facing off with here. To form the team-up, Ramirez stated that each Defender begins to investigate a mystery separately, with the four all converging on the same location after following their own trail of breadcrumbs. Ramirez added, we wanted them all caught off guard by seeing one another at the same location. Once they're in that room together, it's kind of like, oh shit, who are? Regarding the Hand's destruction at the end of the series, Ramirez said, we definitely felt like we wanted this to be the end of specific show. So while I don't know if it's the end of the Hand forever, who knows what will happen in the future, it just felt like it's the end of this story in the lore. Particularly for Iron Fist, we wanted to close that chapter of the Hand story on the decision to kill off Alexandra, who was presented as the show's main villain in the 6th episode. Ramirez said that it was something unexpected to give the audience a jolt rather than play into assumptions, and came from the idea that they had really wanted to focus on Nashio's story and her relationship with Alexandra. He elaborated that it's organic in the writing of Elektra because Elektra has been told by many people in her life what she is, whether it was Stick or Matt. So when she kills Alexandra, it's really her saying, people need to stop telling me who I am. This is who I am, and I think there's something particularly interesting about that idea. He said that similar thoughts were behind Nashio's murder of Stick in the series, and said that the theme of rejecting the identity that the world is trying to put upon you, and having to embrace the identity you want, is one that applies to the four Defenders as well. The final image of Murdock waking up is an homage to a panel from the Born Again story arc, while the nun calling for Maggie is implied to be Murdock's mother, Maggie Murdock. When asked if Maggie in the scene was Murdock's mother, Ramirez could not confirm it, but noted this scene and others in Daredevil's story in The Defenders were homages to the comics, and called the panel taken from Born Again one of my favorite Daredevil images. Ramirez added the scene was included because we didn't want to make the audience think we were trying to cheat them, or convince them of something that's not happening. Given The Defenders released after the announcement of the 3rd season of Daredevil. Casting. At the end of May 2014, Charlie Cox was cast as Daredevil for Daredevil. In December 2014, Krysten Ritter was cast as Jessica Jones and Mike Colter was cast as Luke Cage for Jessica Jones, with Colter also headlining Luke Cage. In February 2016, Finn Jones was reported to be cast as Danny Rand for Iron Fist, with Marvel confirming his casting the following month. They also confirmed that Cox, Ritter, Colter and Jones would all reprise their roles to star in The Defenders. In March 2016, Élodie Yung, who portrays Elektra Natchios in Daredevil, expressed interest in appearing in The Defenders on the bad side. That would be a good dynamic, I think, to be confronted by these four superheroes. The next month, Eka Darville said that he would reprise his Jessica Jones role of Malcolm Ducasse in The Defenders. In September, Simone Missick stated that she would be reprising the role of Misty Knight from Luke Cage in the miniseries. At New York Comic Con in October, Sigourney Weaver was announced as playing the main antagonist of the miniseries, later revealed to be Alexandra. The producers had referred to the character as a Sigourney Weaver type for 4 months before Loeb contacted the actress about the project. After production on the miniseries began at the end of that month, Marvel confirmed that Darville, Missick and Young would appear alongside Deborah Ann Woll as Karen Page, Elden Henson as Foggy Nelson, Scott Glenn as Stick, Rachael Taylor as Trish Walker, Rosario Dawson as Claire Temple and Jessica Henwick as Colleen Wing, all also reprising their roles from previous Marvel Netflix series. Ramón Rodríguez also reprises his role as Bakuto. Other actors reprising their roles for the miniseries include Wai Ching Ho as Majin Gao, Carrie-Anne Moss as Jerry Hogarth, Peter McRobbie as Father Lantern, Rob Morgan as Turk Barrett, Amy Rutberg as Marcy Stahl, Susan Varon as Josie and Nicole Yannetti as Nicole. Additionally, J. Mallory McCree recurs as Cole. Michelle Federer and Chloe Levine portray Michelle and Lexi Raymond. Ron Simons appears as Police Captain Strieber, and Babsola Sanmokan as Sawande, and Yutaka Takuchi as Murakami, who are other leaders of the Hand. Design. Stephanie Maslansky is the costume designer for The Defenders after serving the same role for the previous Marvel Netflix series. Maslansky noted, "We celebrated the differences and the coming together of these four very distinct characters. For each character, there is definitely a color palette. Daredevil, you think of the reds, Jessica Jones, shades of navies and lavender. Iron Fist, you think of the olive green family, and with Luke Cage it's the golds, the Harlem colors. We utilized those palettes and that gave us the distinction." For Alexandra, Maslansky wanted a lot of depth to her wardrobe that was grounded in an older world. Maybe very, in a way, European. More of a global feeling to her wardrobe, very lush. Her wardrobe reflects that kind of ancientness. The series title sequence, designed by Elastic, teases all the heroes through colored topographical views of New York City. Filming. Marvel announced in February 2014 that the series would be filmed in New York City, with Marvel Comics editor-in-chief Joe Quesada stating in April that the show would be filming in areas of Brooklyn and Long Island City that still look like the old Hell's Kitchen, in addition to soundstage work. In April 2016, Cox confirmed a late 2016 start for filming, following the conclusion of production on Iron Fist in October 2016. The Defenders began filming on October 31, 2016 under the working title Group Therapy. Additional filming took place in the Upper West Side, Hell's Kitchen and Williamsburg, Brooklyn neighborhoods, the Stapleton neighborhood on Staten Island Street, Nicholas Park, the Central Park Mall, the rooftop gardens at Rockefeller Center, the downtown Manhattan heliport, 240 Center Street in Manhattan, the Apple Room at Time Warner Center, and the New York City Municipal Archives. Ritter revealed that the series would be filming back-to-back, with the second season of Jessica Jones, adding there was the potential to overlap the two productions. Filming wrapped on March 19, 2017. Clarkson took inspiration, when establishing the look of the miniseries, from other New York set films such as The French Connection, Shaft and Serpico. Clarkson looked to embrace the different color palettes of the individual series and bring them together, noting that Jessica Jones was very dark and very steely and very blue, while Daredevil focused more on red, and so these were emphasized early on. When Murdock and Jones meet, they are in a steely gray-blue room to indicate that it is Jonas' world, with Knight there wearing a Luke Cage-appropriate tan color and Murdock entering and letting red into the room to show the connecting of the two characters. Clarkson also looked to twist the series to indicate that the characters were coming together, including a moment in the first episode where Cage leaves an apartment and puts his head up, which cuts to Jones entering a flat and putting her head down. Clarkson said, "On this I tried to do transitions that connected them even though they were far removed from each other at this point, so you constantly felt these worlds were eventually going to come together." Clarkson also looked to film the action sequences in the different ways that the other series had, such as the incredibly choreographed and almost balletic fights from Daredevil or the more scrappy, messy sequences from Jessica Jones. For Cage, Clarkson felt that he is this solid, central figure that is bulletproof, is unbreakable, so she often filmed him with a static camera or steady camera, while Iron Fist was filmed in a lot more movements and with handheld cameras. The fight between the two in the second episode combined those two styles. Music. In February 2017, John Pisano was announced as the composer for the miniseries, after previously composing the first two seasons of Daredevil. Pisano felt there was more license to push the envelope and lean a bit more into the orchestral colors of each character, since we're dealing with outright superheroes that our audience is familiar with. His score, which was a hybrid of synthesizers and a 30-piece orchestra, borrows the color of each character's themes from their individual series, to remind viewers of their individual personalities. A soundtrack album for the series was released digitally by Hollywood Records and Marvel Music on August 17, 2017. All music composed by John Pisano. Marvel Cinematic Universe tie-ins. The Defenders is the final miniseries of the initially ordered Netflix series after Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage and Iron Fist. In August 2014, Vincent D'Onofrio, Wilson Fisk in Daredevil, stated that after the series stuff with Netflix, Marvel has a bigger plan to branch out. In March 2015, Loeb spoke on the ability for the series to cross over with the MCU films and the ABC television series, saying it all exists in the same universe as it is now, in the same way that our films started out as self-contained, and then by the time we got to the Avengers it became more practical for Captain America to do a little crossover into Thor 2, and for Bruce Banner to appear at the end of Iron Man 3. We have to earn that. The audience needs to understand who all of these characters are, and what the world is, before you then start commingling in terms of where it's going. Midland Circle, where the four Defenders all initially meet, and was previously mentioned in the first and second seasons of Daredevil. And the first season of Iron Fist was revealed to be an operation of the Hand, who bought the building to search for the life substance hidden beneath the property. Ramirez noted that after showing the Hand purchasing the building in the first season of Daredevil, and introducing the hole they were digging in Daredevil's second season, it was not known what they were digging for, and we could come up with anything. Having the skeleton of a dead dragon be the source of the substance the Hand sought felt like the cleanest way to tie everything in, according to Ramirez, referencing back to the first season of Daredevil, where Gao sells a drug made from the dragon's bone crushed into powder. The miniseries also references the events of the Avengers. Release: The Defenders was released on August 18, 2017 on the streaming service Netflix worldwide, in Ultra HD 4K and high dynamic range. The 8-hour-long episodes were released simultaneously, as opposed to a serialized format to encourage binge-watching, a format which has been successful for other Netflix series. Marketing: At San Diego Comic-Con International 2016, a teaser trailer was shown featuring the word "Defend" forming from pieces of the logos from the 4 previous series over the ominous shape of a giant hand, along with Glenn providing a voiceover as Stick, asking how the 4 heroes plan to save New York when they cannot save themselves. For New York Comic Con later that year, the 4 Defenders actors appeared together on stage along with Weaver to promote the miniseries. In April 2017, the release date for the series was revealed via a teaser trailer designed to look like security footage showing the 4 Defenders inside a Midland Circle elevator. The teaser also featured a hidden URL which led to a faux website for the New York Bulletin, featuring plenty of Easter eggs and little details waiting to be discovered. The bottom of the faux website also confirmed the miniseries release date. Dave Lewis of the Los Angeles Times felt having the security footage teaser end on the timecode 8/18/2017 was a fun way to indicate the show's release date. A month later, Netflix and Marvel released an official trailer for the miniseries. They also released multiple motion graphics showcasing various character crossovers through the social media accounts for the Defenders as well as each of the individual series. Nicole Sobin of Comic Book Resources felt releasing each of the graphics this way was a smart marketing move by both Marvel and Netflix, as over the course of the years, the Twitter accounts for each series have managed to drive in plenty of fan interaction by their conversations between the characters. Cox, Ritter, Colter, Jones, and additional stars of the miniseries appeared at San Diego Comic-Con International 2017 to promote the series, where the first episode was also screened. The Defenders had its red carpet premiere at the Tribeca Performing Arts Center on July 31, 2017. Audience viewership: As Netflix does not reveal subscriber viewership numbers for any of their original series, the marketing analytics firm JumpShot determined the series garnered 17% of the viewers that the second season of Daredevil received in its first 30 days, which was the most viewed season according to JumpShot. The Defenders was comparably the least viewed of the Marvel Netflix series, and had the largest week-over-week drop in viewership, declining by 67%, 48%, and 41% respectively over the 30-day period. JumpShot, which analyzes anonymized clickstream data from a panel of more than 100 million Internet consumers, looked at the viewing behavior and activity of the company's U.S. members, factoring in the relative number of U.S. Netflix viewers who watched at least one episode of the season. The data excludes viewing that occurred on Netflix-connected TV or mobile apps. In October 2017, Netflix revealed The Defenders was the third most binge-raced series globally, and first in South Korea of their original series. Netflix defined binge races as members who watched the entire series within 24 hours after its release, and that data accommodated for time zones, and is reflective of a show's launch within 24 hours of a country's release. They also went on to note that the binge racing ranking had no relation to overall viewership. Critical response. The review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reported a 74% approval rating, with an average rating of 6.49/10 based on 77 reviews. The site's critical consensus reads, "Marvel's The Defenders further develops well-known characters in an action-packed arc whose payoff packs more than enough of a punch to offset its flaws." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned a score of 63 out of 100 based on 30 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. The early screening of the first episode at San Diego Comic-Con was met by applause throughout from the crowd. Tracy Brown of the Los Angeles Times noted after a quick refresher on where each hero's solo story left off, there is forward progress in the narratives for each of the Defenders, despite them not interacting in the episode. She added that the episode includes fighting, lawyering, drinking, destruction of property, and yes, even a little bit of physical loving, as has come to be expected for the Marvel Netflix series, and concluded that if every episode of The Defenders ends in a similar way to this pilot, fans may end up binge-watching the show without being able to help themselves. Polygon's Julia Alexander was stupidly excited to binge the rest of the season after seeing the first episode. On the episode, Alexander said, "Even though you know they'll end up getting together to take on the worst villains the city has to offer, having a first episode to set up the Defenders' own personal identities and narratives goes a long way for a show like this." She also called Weaver's Alexandra one of the more entertaining and intriguing antagonists we've got in a Marvel Netflix series, with her relationship to Elektra making her potentially the most deadly. Peter Serretta, for Film, called the episode a fine start to The Defenders, but felt it did not do a great job of explaining these heroes for people who have not seen the individual series. He also commented on the use of color throughout the episode, with colored lighting in the background to match the particular hero who is the focus of the scene, as a way to differentiate each character's story. Reviewing the first 4 episodes of the series, Catherine Trendacosta for IO9 had positive thoughts, appreciating the writers for addressing many of the questions viewers would have coming into the show, as well as the moments fans would love to see. It's fan service done right, without sacrificing the characters of the story. However, she did feel there was an overabundance of talking, explaining every part of the story. She concluded that the good of the Defenders far outweighs the bad. The story isn't revolutionary, and as usual the villains have a typically over-the-top and hilariously convoluted plan, but it's all a canvas to showcase Matt, Jessica, Luke, and Danny coming together as a team. They're not just stronger together than they are apart, it turns out they're more entertaining too. The Washington Post's David Betancourt also gave a positive review, saying, "The Defenders is the type of superhero streaming that we've come to expect from Netflix's live-action Marvel productions. Well worth the wait. The new show is every bit the event that Marvel fans hoped it could be." He enjoyed the pairing of Cage and Rand and felt Weaver's compelling Alexandra was the biggest surprise of the series. Jeff Jensen for Entertainment Weekly gave the series a B, saying the series is a lively genre entertainment that recharges your interest in Marvel pop. It presents as a big event yet values consolidation. He praised the fact that The Defenders was only 8 episodes long compared to the 13 of previous Marvel Netflix seasons, and Petrie and Ramirez for upping their own game, honoring the best parts of every series and elevating the franchise. Dan Jolin of Empire gave The Defenders 3 out of 5 stars, saying, "There is enough joy in watching the sparks fly as these 4 alpha characters finally collide. to make you feel the Defenders might just have been worth the wait. It's a long-anticipated crossover series that delivers some engaging character clashes, but which fails, in the first half at least, to up to the ante story-wise. He also called the villains of the series a mild disappointment, with Weaver's Alexandra, yet another businessperson baddie whose dirty deeds are hidden by sharp suits and a hand, failing to ignite much excitement. Collider's Alison Keene also gave the miniseries 3 stars out of 5, noting it's something new, but it has a lot of problems. If you thought Defenders would be a culminating chapter to the other Netflix Marvel series so far, think again. So far it feels like another prelude, and it makes one wonder if we'll ever get to the main event. She felt some of the solo series issues such as pacing and narrative choices were still present, but like each there are still things to enjoy, including Jessica Jones and the banter among the heroes. Keene added that the show doesn't really come together until the Defenders unite, which helps with some of the pacing issues, but felt one of the major mistakes of the series was setting the series around Rand and his connection to Rand Enterprises. Reviewing the series for Uproxx, Alan Sepinwall felt the Defenders did a good job of borrowing what worked best from the previous series. The fight scenes are mostly Daredevil caliber rather than Iron Fist caliber. Jessica gets a lot of snappy dialogue, the music is strong, and Rosario Dawson as usual works wonders in making these characters feel like they could all be part of the same story. However, he also commented on the pacing of the 4 episodes reviewed, saying it was yet another Netflix ultra-slow burn and a frustrating reminder that even at a relatively compact 8 episodes, these Marvel Netflix shows still don't have a great command of pacing. Once the 4 heroes meet in the 4th episode, Sepinwall felt the series got better, but hoped in the second half of the season both the show and team could justify their existence as something more than a package Marvel put together years ago in the hopes everything would work out. Variety's Maureen Ryan felt The Defenders was a workmanlike series that gets the job done, with a reasonable amount of energy and a few bursts of flair. It may not offer the highest highs of Jessica Jones, and is occasionally a bit blander than an endeavor featuring deadly ninjas and elaborate costumes should be, but the 8-part drama has notable selling points, chief among them an elegant and fierce performance from Sigourney Weaver. USA Today's Kelly Lawler was more critical of the series, awarding it 2 out of 4 stars. Feeling Rand was the undeniable handicap of the series, noting, "One would hope that the Defenders would shy away from Danny and his petulance, but unfortunately, Iron Fist is integral to the larger plot. Every scene featuring him drags and he is in too many to ignore, with clunkier dialogue than his fellows." She also felt the Defenders suffered from the pacing issue the previous individual series had, and while some of the character pairings worked as a group, the Defenders lack chemistry. Lawler felt Weaver was a bright spot, but concluded, "The Defenders will likely please devoted Marvel fans who merely want to see these 4 in the same room. But viewers who were attracted to one or more of the Netflix series for their unique perspectives will be disappointed. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage and even Iron Fist deserve better." Reviewing the entire miniseries, Daniel Krupa of IGN gave it a 6.5 out of 10, saying the Defenders felt uneven, hastily planned, and ultimately like a missed opportunity. Krupa added that the story suffered from pacing issues, and an ill-defined, confused and confusing antagonist in the form of the Hand did not compare favorably to previously introduced villains Wilson Fisk, Kilgrave and Cornell Cottonmouth Stokes, while the inclusion of the supporting characters felt forced. Conversely, Krupa noted that the chemistry between the main characters was excellent, with the reintroduction of Elektra well done given Young provided the most credible and emotionally rich villain for the Defenders to face. He also called the Chinese restaurant scene in episode 4 the high point of the season. Accolades. Cox and Yung were named TV Line's Performers of the Week for the week of August 20, 2017, for their performances in the episode The Defenders. The site described their final fight as an emotionally compelling two-hander and a lover's quarrel like no other, with Cox bringing warmth to the scene and Yung being brutally blunt with her line deliveries. Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Would you like to know more?